has been well debated for a long time, but now a US Senate committee has released a scathing report on the origins of the COVID-19 virus that wreaked havoc in the world for over 2 years and killed millions globally. The interim report states that COVID-19 pandemic was more likely than not the result of a research-related incident. Experts have put forward two dominant theories on the origin of the virus. The first theory is that SARS-CoV-2 or SARS-CoV-2, as we know, is the result of quote-unquote a natural zoonotic spillover. The second theory is that the virus infected humans as a consequence of a research-related incident. The report aims to understand the origins of COVID-19 as it's essential to understand how this outbreak happened, why detection and reporting system did not work as anticipated, and to better prepare for the future health threats. Through the course of the next 30 minutes or so, we will take you through some findings of the US Senate committee report, and then we will discuss this, of course, in further details. I'll start with one screenshot which we have got from the report. If we could take that on our screens, this is the first set of graphics from the US Senate report. Now, this basically shows you where the origin of the COVID virus was supposed to be. We are trying to simplify this for our viewers. The red dot which you see on your screen is the Hunan seafood market, viewers. Now, it's believed, China says, the World Health Organization has literally lapped up China's theory and believed it, that this is where the COVID virus originated from. But right next to it, if you look further down, there is a blue dot as well. Here, I'll zoom it in for our viewers. That's the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, there are a lot of theories which say that this is where the virus had emanated from. To understand really this better, let's take a look at the other areas. Now, all the other areas, the grey areas which you see on your screens are the areas where the virus had spread. In between, this line which you see, and I'm just zooming in for the benefit of our viewers, is a river between the seafood market and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Very, very interesting. Again, we are not jumping to any conclusion, but it's very, very interesting to see that the spread of the COVID virus is very interestingly, if you look at the distribution really of the infection load, it's very close to the Wuhan Institute of Virology and not next to the Hunan seafood market. Is it possible that the virus originates at one place and right next to another place is where you are seeing a spike in cases? Or is it, as many suggest, that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the epicenter of virus? Is it a man-made virus? Let's open it up for discussion. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Chairman, Nephron Clinic with us. Dr. PSV Rao, Consultant Surgeon at the Manipal Hospital with us. Major General Sudhakarji, Geopolitical Expert with us. Vijay Kranti, Foreign Policy Expert also with us. I'm going to take first one question from you, Dr. Bagai, and then we'll move on to the next set of graphics. Dr. Bagai, what do you make of this visual, this graphic which we just showed our viewers? According to you, what does this say? Is it possible that the virus originates at the Hunan seafood market, whereas the load of the virus, the large number of cases are seen near the Wuhan Institute of Virology?
Good evening. If you go through the report in detail and the early suspicions, also talking in terms of biochemically and from the genomic code point of view, the furin cleavage site being tweaked to have a growth advantage. There have been multiple papers on this. It's more likely that it has come out from the lab. The report has also shown, the Senate report has also shown that the country of China has denied all entry, all investigations, and have actually caused hindrances in creating a report. In fact, if China was a sensible and a responsible community, they would have aided in the investigation and given this information. They fudged the data, they've cleared the evidence. There's practically nothing which you will find now. I quite agree with what is being said in the report. It is originated from one of the labs. It has spilled over. Then it goes into the secondary transmission into the wild flesh market. That is different. But culpably, China is responsible for spreading this infection. They knew about it. It's also mentioned in the report at least 3 to 4 months before the first case was actually declared. It is at least 3 months before the WHO called it a pandemic, and at least 4 to 5 months before most of the other countries recognized it as a serious health emergency, which initiated lockdown. China is responsible for devastating the world. They must be held accountable financially, socially, morally, and economically. They have to pay a price for what they have done.
Okay, and I have one more question and then we'll move to the next set of graphics, and for this I'd like to involve Vijay Kranti. Vijay Kranti, the World Health Organization, of course, more or less had given a clean chit to China. They time and again said that they are looking into the COVID origins, and now that we have this Senate report, this shocking report which is out in the open, and this sort of evidence which we have just shown our viewers as to how the viral load was very, very close to the Wuhan Institute of Virology and not the Hunan seafood market, do you think the World Health Organization should once again go back and reinvestigate the origin of coronavirus? Or is it possible perhaps for World Health Organization to be non-partial to begin with?
Unfortunately, the role of World Health Organization has been not up to what it is expected, and especially its responsibility towards the world community. Number one, it was half-hearted in approaching China and getting all the information. And at the same time, when after a very long time, when China did allow WHO, but there was no access, proper access, no meeting with the right people, no freedom to go to those institutions and scientists, Chinese scientists, or conduct any studies there. So they practically went and touched some walls in Wuhan and then came back. And unfortunately, the role of the chief of WHO has not been above doubt. This is something very unfortunate. And one more reason is that China over the years has been able to not only infiltrate, because it has a huge presence among the secretarial staff of almost every section of United Nations. It has won over so many countries through bribing the leaders or by giving big loans to governments to win votes which can block any investigation or any study on China. That is one aspect. But now I think even if WHO is sent there again, I doubt they are in a position to come out with something. The report which has come out from America now, one aspect of it is this is a preliminary report. Yes. But in this report, they have studied very seriously both the aspects. Number one, whether the source
it's a preliminary report, but it has some scathing indictment and some very, very pertinent, observations as well, sir. And those cannot be denied. Now, let's take a look at this next visual, which you can see on your screen. Now, this is where we had seen, of course, a large concentration of the number of coronavirus cases. This is quite far from China, about 1,000 kilometers away from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Where did we see? Of course, this was in the Yunnan province. This was, in Thailand also. A little bit you saw, of course, if you look at the load of virus, you saw towards the closer or rather 1,000 kilometers away from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The idea of showing this is to show us, which is what the experts also say, that if it was being transferred from birds to mammal, it would need an intermediate host and it would infect a lot of others, perhaps other mammals, other birds, other bats, because initially they said COVID started from bats. In the interim period, that did not happen because COVID would need an interim host. It very, very clearly looks like that there was hardly any mutation. A large number of cases were found about 1,000 kilometers away from Wuhan Institute of Virology, because if it was traveling say from the seafood market, it would have infected a lot of people on the way. How did it directly travel 1,000 kilometers away, and that also raises a lot of suspicions and eyebrows, doesn't it? Dr. PSV Rao, if you could come in here, sir.
In a series of articles in the Sunday Guardian last year, I put out a lot of scientific proof of various aspects of this pandemic problem. And one of this is what you are showing now on the map, which is from the Senate preliminary. It's an interim report. It is not their final report. The coronaviruses of this family were collected. They exist in these parts of China and the neighboring Southeast Asia. This is where they are eaten also. They are sold in the wet market. The survey by the Chinese themselves and published in scientific journals had shown that though there were any number of protected animals on sale in the wet market of Wuhan, the bats were not there, nor the pangolins, which they initially said was the intermediary host. These were on sale only in South China, and they are very far off. The bats are incapable of arriving on their own at Wuhan. Now, second point, it is well known and published by the Wuhan Institute itself that they collected bats and various viruses from the bats in not only these areas which is shown on the graph, also from Nagaland in India without Indian government permission. They collected in Africa, they collected in various other parts, plus they stole viruses from the Canadian lab and various other situations. These are all well-known, published scientific details. It doesn't need any doubts on that. Second, they have, so because of this, the Senate report emphasizes that this is very different from all other zoonotic spreads, especially like the SARS virus, which happened earlier.
Okay.
That time, China was very quick in identifying the intermediary host, in revealing everything, and they allowed proper investigation because they knew that they were not involved in this whole incident. This time, they are guilty of it. This is why they have suppressed it. And no wonder they have not allowed WHO, which is anyway influenced by them, or anyone else to investigate it. The Americans also were involved in suppressing this because Fauci, Anderson, and that is Christian Anderson and Peter Daszak were totally involved in this whole affair.
Exactly,
and hence they were suppressing it. Yeah, so thirdly, third thing that has been emphasized by the Senate is the various patents taken. I have put out in my article the patent number, the patent date of their cages for bats. No zoo in the world has succeeded in keeping bats in captivity. They also took a patent on how to feed the bats. They also took a patent on the vaccine. Who took the patent? It was the Chinese army which took the vaccine. Interesting
that you're speaking of a patent, when it comes to viruses from bats, and we'll come back to that vaccine bit towards the end of the show also. But it is very suspicious. It is very suspicious that, the virus travels 1,000 kilometers and reaches, of course, Thailand and other areas, and that is where we saw the initial concentration of cases towards, of course, 1,000 kilometers away from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Very, very interesting, because if it was, that's what the Senate report claims or suggests, that if it was traveling from animals to mammals, then it would have affected a lot of people or a lot of mammals and other species on the way and would have mutated further, which was not seen. And we'll compare this with another virus, and that is a picture which you're seeing on your screens, and we put it for our viewers. This is also from the US Senate report. This is the spread of the avian flu. Now in this picture you can very, very clearly see, remember, avian flu was the bird flu which had widespread in China, and there were a large number of cases. It's a bird influenza, which is the H7N9 virus, and there you can see it's a natural spillover. It is jumping from humans to birds to humans, and then it is mutating further. Very, very interesting. And look at the number or the areas where it has spread. It has spread all throughout all the provinces, of the Chinese city, which you can see on your screen. It is not concentrated in one area, which is what happens in natural viruses, claims the US Senate report. If it is traveling like the avian or the bird flu influenza, when a virus is traveling from, say, an animal or a bird to a mammal or human being. Now let's take a look at this other picture which I have opened on our screens, yes, and if you could just put that picture on our screens, this is the picture and it will show you the difference. That is why we are putting these graphics or pictures one after the other to show a juxtaposition to our viewers. We saw what happened in avian flu, how it had spread all over, very, very natural. Whereas a very interesting thing which we see here is the affected cities. All these red dots are the affected cities. Now these cities are Foshan, Wuhan and other cities. Again, as I said, interesting to see that only cities in a concentrated area were seeing a large number of COVID cases. And I'll zoom it in for our viewers. Just look at how close these areas, affected cities are. Is it common when it comes to a natural virus as compared to the avian flu, which had a wider, spread geographically, number of people, number of mammals and animals it was affecting? It behaved very, very differently. Another interesting point is that COVID initially, at least here, is SARS-CoV. This is the first and original SARS-CoV which we know, which is one mutation. How did it not mutate further? How is it concentrated only in certain areas, unlike the avian bird flu? That's the big question the US Senate report is asking. Major General Sudhakar ji with us. Major General Sudhakar ji, if you could jump in here, sir. What do you make of the latest set of graphics and information which we've put out for our viewers? Do you find it as suspect as the US Senate?
Meenakshi, thank you very much. Despite the fact that I am not a domain expert, yet I admire and appreciate the faith that you repose in a soldier. My comment on the whole thing is, after having browsed through the document, all I can say are a couple of points. To a layman, I consider myself to a layman to this highly specialized subject you have picked up. First and foremost thing, to my understanding, it is a very premeditated biological warfare which has been engineered technologically and scientifically by none other than China, number one. Number two, in geopolitics as also day-to-day human life, there is, whenever anyone commits a mistake, the mistake is broadly analyzed and investigated under two paradigms. One is the error of intent, the second is the error of judgment. Now, in the instant case, I personally feel it is my take, in the given time, whatever I could go through from the Senate report, that the error of intent is actually standing out very loudly. Therefore, whenever error of intent is standing out with 6.6 million deaths, that tinker coming and the counting is still going on, it could be many more. I think there is a requirement for the new world order or the post-Cold War, end of Cold War, in this civilization, that too in 21st century, I think there is a need to pinpoint and ensure accountability. When we talk about the accountability, regardless of the host country or the accused, the International Court of Justice should take action and cognizance of the entire episode. The WHO should also be arbitrated, should be put behind investigation. And also, its conspiracy or the connivance with China must be established. Last but not the least is that your channel is singularly standing out by bringing out such issues which has got not only the national, regional, but the international ramification. There is a requirement in the global order to identify like-minded media agencies, collaborate and form a consortium so that you garner and gather strength to fight the case. Otherwise, this will actually fizzle out in foreseeable future if you do not take it up in real earnest. Back to you, Meenakshi.
Well, absolutely. And, just talking about these cases, there's another set of graphics which we'd like to put on our screens. And I request, of course, my team to take that on our screens. And this will show the concentration of cases and the mutations which had occurred. And that's also very, very important and interesting to see here. We have December 31st, 2019. It was present in one province, which is the Hubei province, and this is where the Wuhan Institute of Viruses. Interesting that the virus starts from the same place where the Institute of Virology exists. Then later it starts spreading further. It spreads to 130 countries within China. It spread to 20 provinces. Later it spreads to 627 countries in 30 provinces, and by 31st of January it has spread to 1310 countries and 31 provinces. Come February 11, it's turned into a full-blown pandemic, and you were seeing a large number of cases in over 1300 countries and 31 provinces. If you look just at China, the number of cases, of course, in a very concentrated area was going above 1000. This is, of course, the spread of COVID-19 within China. Very interesting. It starts in Wuhan and it starts to spread all over China. And if you look at this, graphic, it's very, very interesting to see that there were, as of now, even when the spillover was happening, there were just two sort of versions of the corona virus. Why was it not mutating further? And that's the question, which the experts from the US Senate are also asking. Dr. Bagai, you're the right person to answer it. One, do you also find it very, very suspicious that if, as China claims, the virus started with an animal like, say, a bat, and it spread to humans, then how has it not spread perhaps like avian flu? Why were not multiple mutations found, and why is the concentration so limited? That's the big question, sir. Okay, I think we've lost line with Dr. Bagai. He'll come back with us. Dr. PSP Rao, if you would like to take that question, sir, please.
See, this is about the epidemiology aspect of it. We have already discussed the fact that the genetic aspect of it shows that there has been a furin cleavage site which has been inserted, which is not there in any of the other coronaviruses. It has obviously been inserted there. It couldn't have come by mutation or by spread from other coronaviruses. Now, this map shows that it started around the Wuhan Institute. Then it spread to the whole district around Wuhan. Then it has spread to other parts of China. And throughout, the real focus is the Wuhan. And the other thing is, people don't go around putting up a virus lab like that or any dangerous bio warfare or nuclear facility near a crowded city. If you do that, when there is a leak, like what happened in Bhopal, where a poisonous gas got leaked, you will have mass deaths. And in this case, since it is a biological agent, it will multiply, it will mutate, it will spread. And China, whereas it completely blocked travel in China, it happily permitted air travel to the rest of the world. Yes. And it influenced the WHO in saying that there is no human to human spread. Yeah. They did a lot of damage to the whole world by not being open right in the beginning. That was their responsibility. It's not that there haven't been zoonotic virus events in other parts of the world. It's not that lab leaks haven't happened in other parts of the world, but whenever it has happened, they have been open on it and they have quickly contained it in that area. Now, you don't go and put such a dangerous facility and you do such dangerous thing in a crowded, it's one of the most crowded, one of the big cities of China. So this is a huge disservice China has done. And they have, with their American counterparts, been desperately trying to suppress this whole thing. Because if they were to admit or if they allow a proper investigation, they would be held culprit and they will have huge reparations to make. Obviously, they are trying to suppress it. And In my articles, I've given you all the scientific evidence, not only what this interim report gives. I presume the rest of it will come in the final report of all the patents they took. Can you imagine the Chinese military took a vaccine patent in January? Just when the pandemic was starting and it had not even been announced a pandemic, the Chinese military took a vaccine. I put out the patent number and the details in my articles. Not only that, they had the Pakistani military involved in it. It was there on their website. I took a photo. I put the details in the Sunday Guardian. So these are all various reasons why there is enough proof what they were doing. They themselves had been publishing and tom-tomming all the genetic engineering they were doing, saying that this is scientific advance by China. All this was
okay, I've taken your point, and it's a very interesting point, and let's show one more graphic, since you are mentioning, of course, this conspiracy theory which has been doing the rounds as far as the vaccines development and patent is concerned, and more. And if you could just take this picture, the visual which we have on our screens, and yes, we have it on our screens as well. Now after the COVID virus started spreading, all the companies started producing a vaccine for the same. It takes certain amount of time, and if you look at the time which say a J&J, a Johnson & Johnson took, their first phase was completed by the 15th of July. AstraZeneca first phase finished by 23rd of April, and then if you see the Chinese vaccine, that was done on March 18th itself. The first phase was completed by March 18th. Vijay Kranti, do you smell something suspicious here, considering that the virus originated from China? The origin of the virus is China, and they are the first ones who make the antidote as well.
If you go through the sequence of how it happened, how the whole world got into its the impact became worldwide, you just see the sequence and you will understand. When it's spread all over the world, China was claiming that there was nothing happening till October and November, nothing happened, and everything was free. And even they claimed that in December nothing happened. But it's very interesting that it was only on 25th January that Chinese government put a ban on its own scientists, on all its agencies, all its offices to share any information with the world. But just at the same time, when you see the Chinese New Year happened, it was this time 25th January, and a couple of weeks before that and a couple of weeks after that, millions of Chinese go to their home and or for holiday, and then they go back to their workplaces. And this time the workplaces were the other countries. From Wuhan, the number of travelers, Chinese travelers to Italy and to so many countries where they were living, the number runs into hundreds of thousands. And the Chinese government allowed them to come and go. So this and it was only after that the whole world got into grip of Corona-19. So this clearly shows that the Chinese government was well aware of the spread of the virus, and then they did not stop the movement from China or from people outside and allowed them to go. This simply shows that somebody was planning a very organized spread.
Is it a man-made created virus, or is it something which spread naturally? That debate continues. The final word to Major General Sudhakar ji. Major General Sudhakar ji, as a layman, you rightly said you and I are not medical experts. In fact, nobody really is judge and jury. The final decision, of course, cannot be taken by us as to, we can't sit in conclusion and decide whether this was a man-made virus or not. But do you say, or would you agree, that this Senate report has raised enough suspicions for the world to stand up and take notice and perhaps reinvestigate and relook at the origin of coronavirus? End of the day, we need it, not for ourselves, for our future generations, to protect ourselves from further such viruses like the coronavirus. We don't want another pandemic. We need to be better prepared for the future, don't we, sir?
Excellent. Meenakshi, I couldn't actually compliment you enough. Very well articulated. Actually, when a responsible rising superpower or global power does not own responsibility or the ownership of a problem created within the boundaries of its country, well, what do you say then? What global order are you talking of? It is global disorder. So be that as it may, the least that the world order can do or disorder can do is to identify issues which can be applied or applied to prevent a recurrence of such a kind of a virus in future. And second part of your question is that as far as I am concerned, regardless of what people say and the media say, this document is very authentic. I put my heart on this document and say that it is highly convincing and it should have been rather more hard-hitting. They should have penalized. WHO made it accountable and taken it to the International Court of Justice. Same is the case with China. China, despite its military might and the economic might, doesn't matter if the country is actually, overflowing with wealth. But along with the wealth, there has to be some kind of a wisdom, there has to be some kind of a rules-based international order, some kind of a civilization or way of life. If that is not there, then there should be some measure at the apex organization to isolate this country.
Well, absolutely. And will the world stand up and take notice? Will the world, take cognizance of this report? And some very, very pertinent point which it raises, really it looks like that the role of China is extremely suspicious, whether it's a man-made virus or not. We don't want to decide here today at this moment, but certainly this report raises some big questions and they need answers. Should we relook, reinvestigate the origin of coronavirus? That's a big question, the open-ended question which I leave my viewers with.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.